that was like such a reality check going to Nashville. Was like, my best friend had been a couple times before we went, and she's like, you're gonna cry when you see the drink prices at some places. And I was like, what do you mean? And we came down, and because I was like, well, we lived in Waterloo at the time, okay, so it's like a little less crazy. But we'd go out in Toronto sometimes, and it was like $20 a drink or $25 a drink. So we were like, fuck, that's a bummer. And then, yeah, we get to Nashville, and our first drink bill comes, and I was like, Meg, what the hell are we doing here, dude? On the front porch. On the front porch. Welcome back to another episode of On the Porch with Front Porch Music, hosted by me, Jenna.
And me, Logan.
This week we sat down with Alee.
Mm-hmm.
She is a multiple CCMA, multiple CMA-B nominated singer-songwriter. You may know songs from back in the day like Moonshine, one of her most recent hits, No One Like You, and her latest, Love Songs.
Mm-hmm. So we talked to Alee about a lot. We talked about life in Nashville, what it's like living right in the thick of things. She literally lives in the thick of things. She can see Whiskey Jam outdoors, like right outside of her apartment. We talked about what it's been like living there, writing new music. She has a new song out now called
Better With You.
So here's our chat with Alee.
We are sitting with Canadian country artist Alee. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Amazing. So great to be on here with you guys. Like I was
Welcome
saying,
to the porch.
It's so nice to be here. I've enjoyed listening to so many friends, obviously, on here. So I'm glad to be on the porch now.
Absolutely.
Happy
Honestly,
to have you.
We were talking about like who we wanted to have on for, like, as we're planning. Yeah. And I was like, Logan, you know who nobody has a mean thing to say about, and like she just seems very like down to earth and cool, and we should get to know her a little better, is you. So like we had to.
Thank you so much.
Of course. It's true though. Like I have some of my like best friends in like Canadian country music are like, Alee is amazing. She's great. Like she's a homie, and I'm like, I need to be a homie then. Let's do this. It's actually a ploy. Logan, can we talk to her so I can be her friend?
I love it, but that's the thing, like being especially in this industry, I learned really early on that like all of my best friends were in this industry. Like I have amazing friends outside of it that keep me sane, but like this is like all of my people, you know, the people I go to hang out with on the weekends, who I like celebrate releases with, who we do all the things. We're going for pedicures today. Like it's friends and music, you know, who are just like, oh, we need a break. Like we need a drink. We need something. So I think it's important to keep your friends close, especially in an industry like this.
Totally. You're coming to us from Nashville right now?
I sure am.
Ooh.
How long have you lived there?
It has been, we're coming up to 5 years, which is really
Holy smokes.
great. I know. I kind of did it under the radar because I know, especially like coming down here as a Canadian artist, it's really tough to like not make it seem like you're totally jumping ship on the Canadian side. You know what I mean? Which wasn't the case at all. It was more of like I was coming back and forth for like 7 or 8 years before I moved down here, and it was to the point where as soon as the plane landed, I felt like songs just like came out of the air. Like, and it was weird. That didn't happen as much back home. And I think it's because you're constantly surrounded by such incredibly talented people who also just speak in that language that you're like, oh wait, that's a song. That's a song. And all of a sudden, like, my notes folder just filled up so quick while I was out here, and all my favorite songs were written out here. So I was like, I need to be there as much as possible.
Was it overstimulating at all? You're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
It's still overstimulating. It's to the point now where, like, I'd laugh because my whole first year here, it was like the best advice I was given was like, obviously, like, you go out and do the Red Door thing and the Losers thing and all of that. But like, I was there every single day. Like, if you look at my taxes, I have a Red Door receipt almost every single day the first year I moved here, which is a little concerning. Like, I came from like not really being a drinker at all to being like, oh yeah, I'll just go out for one. And one turned into like 5. And I was like, the first year here was crazy. So many stories. But now I'm like, I'm trying to push myself to not be a homebody, because you get so comfortable here and in creating. And especially after 2020 and all of that, I was like, I'm fine being alone and on my own and just like in my own like creative world. So yeah, it's all overwhelming, to be completely honest.
Yeah. I guess it never turns off either, right? Like, Nashville's a busy city.
It is. And I live like right in Midtown. So that was the thing. I moved in close to
Oh.
Red Door, so I was like a stumble away.
Okay.
And it's like, it's the greatest white noise machine you'll ever
No
buy,
kidding.
you know?
Like get used to. Oh my gosh.
So let's go back to like before you moved to Nashville. So you and I, we've never met. I truthfully, I don't know a whole lot about where you like
That's perfect.
where you started.
I've got stories.
Oh,
Let's
well,
go.
let's go to the stories then. So,
Yeah.
you know, where'd you grow up? Who, you know, how'd you get into this industry? How'd you fall in love with music? Let's talk about it all.
Yeah, so home is Edmonton, Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
Born and raised, living with my parents literally until the second I moved to Nashville. So like always been
Nothing
home.
like diving right in.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was just like, yeah, if we're doing it, we're doing it. Yeah, I grew up. I'm the first of 3 kids, and my mom wanted to play the piano before having me. So they bought this beautiful baby grand, and then had me, which obviously through just a huge, you know, I can't even think of words this morning. Yeah, either way, it ruined their plans.
Oh,
They got me into playing piano, and I was the kind of person who very quickly learned that I could read music like seamlessly, to the point where every single week I would go back to the piano teacher and she would be like, "Oh my gosh, she sounds so much better." And my mom was like, "Don't tell her that. She hasn't sat down at the piano all week. Like, I'm really good at reading music." So by the time I was 13, I finished my Royal Conservatory and was like, okay, I want to pick up something new. My parents always say that the funny story was when they were going instrument shopping, I was the one who was crying for the violin at that point. And so it was just kind of inevitable that at some point I would pick up a string instrument, obviously the guitar being the next move. And I could just kind of like sat and taught myself for a bit. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the McDades. Terry McDade is the dad of all of the kids who are also part of their Juno-winning group in folk music. But Terry McDade was my guitar teacher and
wow.
Was like the coolest guy ever. I still like went home for Christmas and saw him. But really good people, and it just inspired me to start writing more music. I was a big fan of poetry growing up, big fan. And I would just sit in my room and write lyrics and then pick up the guitar and start putting the music to it. So that kind of started a lot of the adventure. And when I was 17 or so, I started shopping around for being like, I need these recorded. I need something to, you know, pitch to people for co-writes, really. Because at this point, all I had were, I don't even know if I had a phone at this time, to be completely honest. I guess I had just gotten a phone. Like, that's how we were. It wasn't like iPhone now where you just hit like voice memo and you're good to go,
Yeah.
you know?
Flip open the phone, use
So,
P9, there you go.
yeah, exactly. So I went to MCC in Calgary, and I took meetings with a bunch of people who, a lot of the songs that I was writing, they were like, "Oh no, you're like folk. You're this. You're this." And I finally like got into the studio with Johnny, and he was like, "Oh no, I hear it being like this, this, this." And that was at the point in time where like skipping banjo was kind of like just starting, and I was like, I kind of want to do like some of this stuff, and it was kind of still, that was in like demos that I was hearing, not even music that was out yet. So he was willing to kind of like do this weird thing with me that seemed very unheard of at the time, you know, moving more of like the pop side into country music. And that was the start of things. I got all these songs back, and now listening back, like I love them so much. But you know, like even songwriting wise, when you're like, oh, that's an older song for sure. Like that's how it feels to me now a little bit. But I got home and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm going to call up every single radio station in town and be like, hi, I'm Alee and you should play this. And I did.
It's crazy not to play it.
And I did. And the first single was shy of cracking top 50. And that was me just like calling everyone and being like, hi, hello, I'm here and I'm ready for this adventure to start. So that's where things kind of happened for me, long story short.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You did release some music independently that cracked top 10 before you kind of like moved into a bigger project too, right? Like that's a big feat.
Yeah. It was literally my first, what was it? It was a top 20, Don't Say You Love Me, that got me my first record deal. And
No way.
it wasn't even just a record deal. It was like I had 5 different deals on the table to choose from. And I just never thought that was possible, just being like a girl from Edmonton who had really been to like Toronto maybe once or twice, never really for music, you know what I mean? I was chasing my sister. I don't know if you guys remember the show The Next Star on YTV.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my sister was on The Next Star, and that
No
was like
way.
I got to go to Toronto was because she was they were filming the top 16 episodes, and like so my sister's the reason I got to do a lot of traveling. Like even to
Wow.
Nashville,
That's so funny.
before like I ended up coming here to write, it was like my sister who was winning vocal competitions that brought us to Nashville, which is
That
cool.
is so
Wow.
funny. I will say, like, Don't Say You Love Me I was still downloading music illegally for sure. And it was among these like probably like 15 songs. I would listen to like 15 songs on repeat at the same time.
Yep.
And you don't know it. I was just a like everyday listener of music at that point, and it took me like 4 or 5 years to catch up to like, oh, she's Canadian. Oh, that's really cool. And then like backpedaling, there's a few artists where I was like Jake Matthews, I think was a little bit bigger at that time too, and I was like, I didn't know he was Canadian. And now it's like people you just like interact with at like industry things, you're like, wow, when I was like 15 and 16, like you were in my headphones on my like iPod Touch, and I thought that was so cool. And now it's just so funny how like things are so full circle. It's hilarious.
When it only gets smaller and smaller now, I think,
Yeah.
especially because everyone's back and forth, where you're just like, wait, who is from where? Like all of that kind of it's really cool.
Yeah, it is so cool. But yeah, so that song like got you your first record deal, which is really huge. You were like pretty young still too when you got your first record deal, right? So
Yeah, much younger than I am now, that's for sure.
Relatable.
Yeah.
did you have any clue, like, you also just like called radio stations like, can you play my song? Like, did you have any clue like how this stuff worked, or were you just like, I'm gonna go in blind and figure it out?
I had always had an appreciation and love for like the business side of things. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. Like some days I'm like, I wish I could just drop that and just be like the artist who has no clue what they're doing. Because I feel like sometimes like, not that things can come off as ingenuine, but kind of a little bit when you like almost have like too planned of a brain. You know what I mean? Where like I've really tried the last couple years to just like drop that and just do things without thinking. But I kind of started like researching, and I was like, oh, you release through like DMDS. And like when you release through DMDS, you get like a list of all the radio people, and then I would go to like every radio website and look up like PDs and MDs, and then I would call stations just like bugging them for emails, and it was just like this whole work through of like, at some point I will get them. At some point I will show up at the building if I need to and knock the door down.
Well, that's great. Like that's what sets artists apart. I mean, I come from a radio background. I worked at country radio in Ottawa. That's where I kind of first got into the music industry. And the new artists who were independent, who got attention or got played, were always the ones who went above and beyond like that. And like, so like, it's the right thing to do for sure. I mean, there's a fine line between harassment and like, and like, you know, getting it done. But
I like to think that the like Canadian in me always holds me back just enough over the line where I don't go too far though. You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's so funny. So yeah, you've been in Nashville for about, like you said, 5 years, and there are a lot of Canadians, even right now, young artists who are considering like, should I move to Nashville? What is this like? One, should I save plane ticket money going back and forth? But
Totally.
what was like the kind of the core decision making in that for you?
I was at a point where I had just released, what was it? We did an EP and then a full-length album with the label. And as much as I loved the team, there's a point in your life as an artist where you're just like, okay, if it's not like exactly what it needs to be team-wise, if it's not the perfect match, it doesn't really do anyone any good. And for me, I was just like, I love all of these people, but it just might not be exactly the perfect fit. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like the best part of what I've done so far is learning like when to step away from things sometimes. And with that said, I got out of that deal and was like, okay, I need a total creative change of things. Otherwise, I know I'm going to get really down on this too. It's just the kind of person that I am, where I will sit and just like wallow and not know where to go next. So I was like, okay. I pulled out my computer. I Googled literally apartments in Midtown Nashville. Did a walkthrough over FaceTime. Found a lawyer. Got them to start the process of my visa application. And I remember walking down the stairs that day and being like, okay, well, I'm moving to Nashville. My mom was like, with what money? Like, end up doing? Like, you're still living at home at this point. And I don't know, there was just something in my brain that was just like, now needs to be the time. Now is the transition. Also for writing purpose, you know, there was just so many emotion at that point where I was like, yeah, this feels like it's meant to be. And it's kind of crazy. Like when I got here, because I literally flew, I didn't even have a car out here yet. So I flew with 2 suitcases just full of like whatever I thought I could work with. The first 2 weeks of living here, I didn't have a mattress. I literally had like literally nothing. No dishes, like no nothing. I was living just in a box. I still live in a box. It's 500 square feet. It is a box. But I had nothing. It was like restarting over again. And there was something very therapeutic. Actually, you can see this wall right here.
That's a sweet wall.
Whoa. Yeah. So when I moved to town, obviously I wouldn't say broke. Like I saved up. I actually worked, fun fact, I worked a construction job before moving to Nashville so that I could save up money to work here. So it was like shutdowns in the dead end of winter, like at like power plants and like working at my dad's construction company. Like we're not talking about just like little girly like construction jobs. I was full on in it, working like full like 9-10 hour days in the heat, in full construction PPE, like all of the things.
Wow, good for you.
I was like, okay, we need to be smart about this and not lose all of the money immediately within the first 3 months of being here. So I was like, okay, I need a creative outlet. I think I'm going to get, you know, like easel paper that you used to like draw on. I got easel paper, put it up on the wall, and went on Facebook Marketplace and was like, okay, I need to find someone who has like a bunch of like really cool magazines. And again, I did not have a car yet, but we have scooters in Nashville. So I bought a backpack. I got on a scooter and I scootered to this person's place, not realizing that 40 magazines kind of really weigh you down. So I was like, okay, well, we'll pay for the Uber back to the apartment, I guess. And I spent like the first 2 months like ripping out pages in the magazines and like starting to collage them together. And it was kind of like an inspiration board as to like who I was going to like transition into being artist-wise and like what I wanted to be and what I wanted to say and all of those things. So that is my very cheap artwork that I just like, I absolutely love, and I'm dreading moving one day. But the good thing is it's on easel paper, so I can just take it down and move it with me.
You totally can.
It looks really cool.
Thank you.
That's so funny. Also, you've lived in Nashville for 5 years and you're in the same apartment that you just like virtually toured and hope for the best. That's pretty good.
Well, and it's a thing where I'm just like, once you're in it the way that you're in it, because like I have friends now that are buying houses and moving like a little further out of town, because that's all you can afford right now, is nothing like actually in Nashville. It's so expensive. I've just fallen in love so much with, again, getting back to the white noise and the life on the weekends and like the woo girls driving by on the buses and like just like all of those things where it's so cool to be like right here and right a part of it. Music Row is 1 block behind me and Red Door's 1 block in front of me. And I'm like, this is a cool place to live in. I don't want to move ever.
That is so funny that you live so central to all the chaos and love it. How high off the ground do you live though? Are you close or no?
I am many floors off the ground, like closer to 20 than not. So
I'm scared.
Yeah.
That's scary.
It's fun though. I love it. I love just sitting on my balcony and listening. We actually get whiskey jam. Like I'm literally right behind Winners and Losers. So when they do outdoor whiskey jams, I can sit on my balcony and watch. Yeah.
Fun.
It's really
That is so cool. Actually, I was there in the summer for an outdoor whiskey jam and we saw people sitting in apartment, like sitting on their balconies. And I was like, wow, that's like the best view of the show.
That was absolutely me.
I was like sweating in this crowd of people. It was so hot. It was during like the major heat wave. And I was like, man, I bet you those people are comfy up there.
And I've never been to Nashville.
Well, and now you got to come visit.
I know, I do. I have to.
At least for a Whiskey Jam outdoor show. Now you guys know where you can be.
Exactly.
On your balcony. This is perfect. We don't have to go into the crazy and pay $25 a drink or whatever.
Oh, everything here just so expensive. And that was the thing. Like, COVID was a year too where I was like, okay, like the dollar exchange was like higher 1.5 at that point, and I was like, I will die here. Like, that is what is going to happen. But it was a point where like everyone was saying, as soon as you leave Nashville, like you kind of get back into line again. Like, you don't end up being where you were beforehand. So I was like, okay, I'm just here and I'm going to stick it out. And it really sucked watching friends leave, because like I almost did watch that like kind of step back where you start all over again, which is the weird part about this town. But yeah, crazy.
It is crazy. How did you, obviously you had traveled to Nashville quite a bit, so you had some friends and people you wrote with regularly, but how did you like start to build your circle outside of those core people you knew then? Because obviously like you're like, I have so many friends here, and then but everybody has a life, so it's not like you can knock on somebody's door every single day, right?
Honestly, a lot of it was like, it was going out to Red Door and just like expanding the friendship group. You know, you had the people you knew who introduced you to new people, and then things kind of started to form. And I was really lucky, like I said, before kind of getting here, that I had a bunch of people I knew. It was going out to like writers rounds, a lot of those like on Demumbrian, and just meeting a ton of people. And honestly, like my best friends now are still the people that I met like the first couple months of living here. You know what I mean? So it happens very quick. And especially now, it's cool to see like you kind of rise with your friends, is how everyone's always explained it. And it's really neat to see that the people that I did make friends with like those first few months of being in town are now like, we're all kind of doing the thing together, which is really neat.
That is really cool. Okay, before we beat the Nashville horse to death, like we'll move on. Yeah. We'll move on. What's your like top piece of advice for people who are looking to move to Nashville? Like what's your reality check, baby?
I was talking to someone the other night about this. And it was that when I was doing trips, like 2-week-long trips, I felt like I was so productive. I was writing 2 times a day, 3 times a day, going out to rounds at night. You kind of have to realize that it's not realistic that you're going to always do that if you're here full time, and be okay with that. And know that you are probably going to get canceled on a lot because people know that you're around, you know? When I was here, you know, for 2 weeks, it was like everything was awesome, everything was great. And then you're here and people are like, hey, I'm actually not feeling great today. Like, can we do this in like 3 to 4 weeks? And you're like, well, I really wanted a song today. Like, I'm trying to cut songs, but like, yeah, that's fine. And it's just like, you really have to be realistic about it, because it's easy to get down on yourself, I think, being here, especially surrounded by so many talented people. So it's like coming in with expectations of like just being the best you as possible and taking everything with a grain of salt. I think that would be my advice.
That's super important probably too, because I feel like everybody kind of gets their reality check. That's the high, like I just moved here, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I live here and I work here. So that's super important.
So moving away from Nashville into more of like the music conversation. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you're talking about, you know, organizing co-writes and all that. What is do you have a typical process for writing a song? Like, does it start with a note, or does it start with, you know, a melody?
If I'm going into a room, I love, like, obviously having a list of titles that I'm like, okay, this will work. Also, I'm the kind of person that before going into a write is like, okay, these are the titles I think would work well with these writers. So my brain overworks that, because there's nothing worse than leaving a room some days knowing that not it's a song to waste, but like kind of. Sometimes ideas go to waste when you bring them into the wrong rooms. And I'm not the kind of person who likes to rewrite an idea. I feel really bad about doing that. Whereas I know people in town who they're like, if I didn't get it right the first time, I'll go and write that title 10 other times until it's exactly what I want. And I respect that. But again, the Canadian in me will not let that happen. But yeah, I kind of come in with titles. I come in with voice memos, songs like No One Like You, honestly, was a song that the morning before the write, I knew I was going in to write with Thomas Archer, who had written like a bunch of Luke Combs stuff at that point, and Lala, who was like my favorite person in town. And I was super, super nervous. It was the first time working with either of them. So I worked all morning long, just like hitting record on my phone and just like trying different melodies to things and like some lyrics and whatever. I had the chorus idea, like the No One Like You parts, and then I had like all of the melodies in the verse as well. So I probably go in more with melodies to start with. I love a hooky melody. There's nothing I love more than that. And then working it around a title and then getting into really cool lyrics. So it's different every time, though.
Fair.
Are you able to be that like different? Because there are multiple writers in the room, and some they have their strengths. Can you be the melody person or the lyric person or the sound person kind of a deal?
Yeah, definitely. And I find that it honestly just all depends on who's in the room that day. Like there's some days where I'm like, wow, I was a really, really, really good lyricist that day. But it's like almost being surrounded by people too, I think, who push you a little harder than what you usually would be. Otherwise, I'd be like, oh yeah, that line was fine. And they're like, I feel like we can do better. And then you just end up like chasing things that you never probably would have.
Yeah, I think that's like the simplest piece of advice that people are always saying is like surround yourself with people who are better than you.
Absolutely. And that's really tough. I feel like in this industry, especially the day and age we're in, where a lot of people who get to work with people better than them are people who are like signed to labels and have big teams and all of that. So it's tough. I know, like even watching young artists where it's like, okay, where do you take the next step? How do you kind of work your way up? And I think like it's the same way that I found like the production team that I work with right now, where I would log onto Spotify every week and go to New Music Friday Country, and I would go through every single song and listen through and be like, okay, I like the production, or like maybe I like the lyrics and whatever. And I would just see the credits and start like making notes of, okay, these are people I think I want to work with. And when I would see their names come up more and more, I was like, oh yes, that's someone I know I would work really well with.
Yeah, because it clearly resonates with you in some way. It's really funny because I forget who I was talking to the other day, and they were saying, I was another artist. He was saying that he's like, I really love this song and I really love this song, and they're so different. And I was like, are they? So I went to Spotify to the credits. Two of the co-writers were the same, and the producer was the exact same, and they were like such different sounds. I was like, no, there's something in there that draws you to both. It's so interesting when you're like, that's why I like both of these things.
Yeah, Jenna and I live in the credit section of Spotify.
Yeah. It's so fun. That was like one of my favorite things that Spotify actually brought up, because it was like, otherwise I would be searching Google for so long and failing at finding any of the information.
There's no more like credit books anymore.
No. I miss like actually having a physical copy of albums so bad.
Me too.
I collected those like crazy, and
but yeah. They're all in my parents' basement right now. So like
yeah, exactly same.
I only have one CD player. It's in my car. My car still has a CD player, and it's not even old. So like, but that's the only place I can play it. I got an album. Somebody handed me an album at the CCMAs, and I was like, how am I gonna play that? My car. Thank God, I have my car.
It's so funny you say that, because there's literally a song that's going to be on the album, and I wrote it about, we were talking, it was a bunch of the guys talking one day about like, oh, I got a new truck, I went and test drove a lot of stuff, and there's no radio in it anymore, or something along the lines of, I don't know what the situation was, but then we made a joke of like, oh yeah, wait until the day that there's no more trucks, and that sparked a song idea, obviously, but it's just like,
wasn't that big?
It's like my laptop now. I'm like, it doesn't have a CD drive spot. Like, what do I do now?
I know.
You have to get a external CD thingy, and then you have to get a converter, because that's probably a USB, and your laptop doesn't have USB anymore. It's USB-C. Like, what a process just to listen to a CD.
Started on converters. I've been, you guys, I've been making music and demos and everything on the 2011 laptop I bought for like university. And everyone was like, please just get a new one. And I was like, why does nothing work on here? And they're like, please. And I until the day it died, I was like, okay, this is fine. But yeah, I'm not ready to get up with the times. I don't know. I like having like the old days of like cassette players and like all of that where you had to hit stop and rewind and not rewind too far into the song beforehand to like re-listen to your favorite songs. Like when you actually had to work to have a favorite song.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, that's so funny.
And then, you burned your own CDs with all your favorite songs, and yeah.
Like
And,
going back
and
to
of course got them off Napster or LimeWire or whatever.
those were my favorite days where my mom was like, why do we have viruses on the computer? And it's like, I don't know, because I've been trying to download my favorite songs for the last like 3 weeks.
And then going through like the info tab in iTunes to make sure it's all like right, put the album artwork on. Oh yeah.
I didn't know you could do that until I did, and then I went through my entire library, and I was like, oh, everything has to look good.
I love it. Yeah, good days.
Back to music. When you were talking about writing with other people and getting a melody in your head, a question popped into my head, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. So, when you do have a melody pop into your head, are you more likely to go sit at the piano since you are so like trained there, or go grab your guitar?
So it's interesting because just before like moving to Nashville, when I was doing all my writing, it was guitar, because I was like, okay, tempo. I figured like when I sit down at the piano, it's a lot of ballad stuff.
Yeah, the piano does lend to a good ballad.
It does, absolutely.
I look at my dusty piano over there.
But no, it is just a totally different thing, and I love it. So I really focused on a lot of guitar stuff the first couple years of moving here. And it would have been like 2021 where I was just like, I need something different creatively, and sat down at the piano. And it's so wild where like I feel like I fought it for so many years being like, no, piano's not my instrument. Like even growing up, it was like, I will not practice. I will not do any of this. But there's something magical about sitting down at a piano and creating just really cool melodies and all of that. So that's been my interest of choice as of late.
Does that change like the depth of some of the songs that you're writing and how they're coming out?
Yeah, I think so. Especially like, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about it this morning that for the last 2 projects, I feel like a lot of the songs that I was writing and releasing were songs that just felt like really good radio songs more than anything. Where I'll be completely honest, last year I didn't really want to write for myself at all. I just felt like in a complete rut where I was going into rooms working for other artists because I loved going into a room and being the person who was like, you say you want to do this, you want to say this, you want it to sound like this. And I was really good at piecing those pieces together. I was a puzzle person growing up, by the way. I love like making everything fit. But I loved coming in with that outside perspective. And it wasn't until we wrote 24 that I got inspired again to work on this project. And a lot of the songs this time around are songs that sitting at the piano, it's more, not that they weren't ever real stories, but it's real stories more than ever right now, that I feel like I'm saying things that are actually going on in my head and pertaining to my life versus looking from the outside in.
Yeah. And 24 is like deeply attached. Like that's like all for your sister too, right? So
yeah, no, exactly. It was Lauren was the inspiration. Lauren actually, if you ever come to a live show on the Canadian side, plays with me still on stage.
Oh, no way.
Banjo, background vocals, and the diva of the group. I will tell you that much. I feel like it was being like the second. She's definitely middle child. She gives that full vibe. It's so much fun though. But yeah, no, 24 was a song that I wanted to write for her because I saw through her everything that I was going through when I was 24, and like 24 was the year that I started making all my moves to Nashville and all of that too. So like I remember going through that, like, okay, wanting to move out of mom and dad's, but also being super broke and like not knowing like how to make new friends and like meet the love of your life and like grow up, you know? Like it's crazy to think that like there was a point in my life where I was still living as though I was 21, or honestly, I say 21 now being in the States, 18 more so from Alberta, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like there just comes a day in your life where I'm like, I can't do this anymore, but I don't know where to go next. So I wanted to write a song for her, and yeah, I'm really excited that a lot of people related to that one.
What were her thoughts on that song?
Well,
I
I'll
can't
tell you
believe
this.
you're writing about me. I want this.
Middle child.
It's so funny. So this was I'll start with saying, like, in 2020, when TikTok came out, I was like, no, not my thing. Absolutely not my thing. I'm too old for this, and all the young ones are great, and I will suck. But when we wrote that song, I was like, this could be a fun TikTok idea. So I knew she was coming to Nashville a couple weeks after we wrote it. And so I was like, Joe, okay, we need the demo. We need all this. I'm going to play it for her first time in the car. We're going to do the car reveal. It was Cinco de Mayo. And I took Lauren out to this Mexican bar, and she had a tower of margaritas. Perfect timing.
Tower. How does a tower of margaritas work? I must
It's
experience
like a
this.
tower, really. And it's the greatest thing ever. We know this spot in town where, like, you talk about expensive drinks in Nashville. The tower of margaritas, at this point, they've definitely bumped it up since then, but it was $29 for a tower of margaritas. So I was like, oh, yeah, this is what we're doing today.
All right, so when we come to Nashville to go watch Whiskey
I'll
Jam,
take you back.
yeah, we're going to go there too.
But she got in the car, and my typical sister, typical Lauren, she goes, oh, is this a song about me? Like, not knowing anything was coming next. And then I hit play, and she just, like, breaks down into tears. And it was the sweetest, most precious moment ever. But yeah, no, I feel like she was still, like, listening to it randomly here and there, and it was just really cool to see her, like, wanting to post about it and being like, this is about me, this is my life, this is what I'm going through, and she still listens to it on her own time, which is really cool.
That is so cute. That's such an oldest child thing too, because you're like subliminally making sure she's okay and giving her advice, and like, you know, like I'm cheering you on still. I'm the oldest of my siblings too, so I'm like, that's like what I would take from that.
Well, it's so funny because, like, one of the songs that inspired that whole idea was, like, I'm a big Brad Paisley fan. Like, that's who got me into country music. Like, I started my writing career early on was writing, like, comedic country, like Brad did. Like, that was my favorite thing to do. But Letter to Me was one of my favorite songs. And I was like, what would Letter to Me be like as, like, a letter to my sister kind of thing? Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that. I want to jump back slightly when you were saying, like, you were writing for radio and that wasn't necessarily, like, hitting home for you. And how, like, sometimes, like, you just get into this rhythm and then all of a sudden you realize, like, is this what's important to me? And you kind of get, like, off track a little bit. So I feel like that's kind of where you got to before you're like, how am I going to write for myself again? And what am I going to write about? And it has to actually be my life that I, like, feel these things.
Totally. Well, and it's, like, it's really hard. I look back at, like, the first songs I ever wrote, and it's really cool because there was no formula. Yeah. It was just, like, in the moment, feeling it. Rhymes would come in when rhymes were coming in. It wasn't like an A, B, C structure. You know what I mean? Where once I feel like I started writing with people who knew what they were doing, my brain couldn't cut out of that world.
Yeah.
And again, it's really hard. Once you have the formula, you're like, why would I change it? And you also hear things. But I think that was the real important thing about getting into the room with co-writers. And again, co-writers that almost have, like, a different way of doing things with you. Like, I know for me, I definitely lean more pop. I know that is how I've always been. But moving into this new era, I'm really trying to fit myself in with lots of, like, true country writers, because it's creating a really cool mesh and getting me out of my typical formulation of things, which is really fun.
Yeah, completely. I think we're starting to get close to the end. Are we? Yeah, he's the time checker. But let's talk about your new song. That one actually did quite well on TikTok too.
Yeah, which is hilarious because every artist, no matter who you are, there's always going to be a stressor now of, like, okay, we must make it work on TikTok before it comes out. And I remember being 2 weeks out before.
Do you find that
release.
annoying or like just it is what it is?
I mean, both. I think I've learned, the one thing that I've learned the last, let's even say 6 months, is that I am no longer making the content to make other people happy. I am like making cool things that I really love, like even like promo videos and like all of that. I love doing all of the creative aspects. So I'm just like, I'm going to create things that I think are really cool, and I'll find the people who love it just as much as I love it. And if I don't, no harm, no foul. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I still think it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so funny. Like the story of love songs is exactly it. Like it's just like a really happenstance moment that I was playing a show. We were in the middle of When You Say Nothing at All, which is like one of my favorite love song covers, and we're halfway through like the first chorus, and this woman comes up to the stage, and she was like, "Hey, I'm paying you to stop playing this." And like, obviously, that had never happened to me before. I've never witnessed that happen to anyone before. So I did, because I'm, again, Canadian. I don't know how to stand up for myself sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever's going to make
What
you
a
happy.
weird thing to say, though.
Weird until you realize that she was recently divorced and it was her wedding song.
Oh.
And that was the moment, like, I couldn't drop it the rest of the set. In the back of my brain, I was like, some love songs are not love songs anymore for some people. Like, I've been through that moment before where I'm like, no, can't listen to this song right now, skip to the next one. And that was the moment where I was like, that's a cool idea, I want to write that. So pretty much I posted the TikTok telling the story of this woman and how the song came to be, and I was like, and it's coming out next Friday. And within 24 hours, it was well over 1 million views. We're at like almost 2 million now. And
Wow.
I'm like, it's weird when it works. Because like before that, I had videos that really like, it was like either you get like 10K. I got like a couple with 30K. Otherwise, it was like, you're like clawing to get 200 views. You know what I
You're
mean?
preaching to the literal choir right here.
Really? Well, that's someone too. I feel really bad coming in and saying that, because I've been really lucky to have a lot of songs. Like we're over 13 million streams on like a lot of songs. Like I've had
Congrats,
success.
that's awesome.
I've had radio play. Thank you so much. That was not meant to be a humble brag by any means, but that was like, Laura said it, where like you have all these independent artists who are creating such great music, where we're dealing with an algorithm, you know? Like it doesn't mean your song is good or bad. And I recently had conversations with a lot of people who've had success on TikTok where they're like, well, you should be, like teasing songs on TikTok that you're writing. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, and then cut based on what works. But my one thing is that, again, I feel like as an artist, you cut songs that hit home for you, and you will find your people.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed. Because if it's not
Getting back
genuine
to
to you, then it's not going to be genuine to the audience either.
exactly.
I mean, the TikTok
So-
algorithm is fickle. Yeah, sure, it may go viral. It may get you a lot of streams for like 2 weeks, but it's not going to have any lasting power.
Totally. And the best thing that you can do is release stuff that you know is genuine to yourself, that builds yourself a fan base, that you can go and tour and they know all of the songs. So
Exactly.
that's where we are.
Yeah, the social media demon in general is something we talk about frequently with people, because like the relationship with social media can be so tough, and for some it's just so easy to like throw up their phone on the tripod and do something, and others it's like, I don't want to do this, I can't do this, and it's just it's hard. You have to promote yourself, you have to get out in the world, and social media has brought like potential fans and listeners so much closer to you if you can like get into it, right?
Yeah, and if you can not stress, like I think about, I feel like I didn't post until like the first week of January on Instagram, and the time I had posted before that was like October, the first week of October, because I was like, nothing works in the like aesthetic feed of my Instagram, and I was like, that is the dumbest thing you've ever said. Just post something, you know, like it doesn't matter how like it looks on the feed. Obviously, I do enjoy when it does. But yeah, just post, be you, because that's what people want, you know?
Do you feel like the music you have releasing and what's like, well, what you've just released and what's coming up is like very like true to you, and you've like found this like confidence, like this is me, this is what I believe in. These are the things I want to say.
Yeah, definitely. This new era, as we will call it, of Alee is definitely finding the simplicity in things too. Because I feel like a lot of my career has always been like, okay, how do we make this a little trickier? Like, how do we add some like cool, weird things that make this really different? And this whole album process has just been like, for instance, this is the first album in a while that I'm working with one and only one producer. And that's someone I found after going through my Spotify playlist, being like, this guy never misses. And Eric has been one of the greatest people in my life and has really also helped me hone in on like, these are the songs. These are the ones out of the batch that speak to you and what you're doing and sound cohesive and cool. And like, it's really nice having a champion, really, of a project who's helping see things from my eyes. So yes, long story short, yes, this new album is more me, I think, than what you've ever heard from me. And I'm very excited to show you guys the rest of it.
Amazing. Well, you have a new song, Better With You, coming out soon. What can people expect from this one?
This is the first one for the project. I know we always talk about like needing a fun up-tempo song. The one thing when I started working with Eric, he was like, Alee, let's focus on writing some more love songs for this project. I love a heartbreak song. Very happy person, love a heartbreak song.
The happiest people always make the best heartbreak songs.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Absolutely. And that was the world I was living in. But it's so crazy how your brain kind of flips a switch once you're in that world of writing happy things, and just like the positive energy that's also brought to everything else I do, where I'm like, oh, maybe this was an issue for a lot of my life, where I was just living on like, not that there's anything wrong with like Avril Lavigne, like complicated vibes, but like I love some good angsty heartbreak songs. Yes, Better With You is one of the first like really fun love songs for this album. Just talking about how, like whether it's your best friend, your significant other, all of that, like there's just something better when they are around. And I think it's just going to be a fun sing-along for everyone to kind of get us into the summer. So.
Well, I can't wait to hear it.
And can you tease a little bit when your album will be coming out? Do you have any idea yet?
Yeah, I mean, we're, I think, really close to wrapping up. I would love a couple more songs, and other than that, it's ready to go. So hopefully this fall you'll have brand new music from me, and then I'm ready to get on the road, finally.
Yes, love that. Love that.
Well, Alee, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and to get to know you a bit more. Come on back to the porch anytime.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I can't wait till the next time.
Thanks for listening to another episode of On The Porch with Front Porch Music. We're so lucky to be able to chat with artists and make episodes like this one. If you like the podcast, remember to rate and review us, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. It's the easiest way to support the show. Remember to check out frontporchmusic.ca to keep up with new music releases, exclusive artist interviews, and more. We'll catch you again on the porch in a couple of weeks. On the Porch is hosted by Logan Miller and Jenna Weiser, and produced and edited by Jason Saunders. That's me. Our theme song was written, produced, and performed by Owen Wrigley.